Ahoy and welcome to this instructional video on cropping for composition. Today we'll be using Adobe Photoshop to explore how different crops and aspect ratios can change the feel and impact of an image. In this video we're going to use the crop and history tools in Adobe Photoshop to experiment with various compositions. By the end of this tutorial you'll understand how altering the crop and aspect ratio can dramatically affect the overall look and message of your photos. First, open Adobe Photoshop and load the high-resolution image you've been provided for this assignment. For this exercise, we're going to use the crop tool, which can be found in the left toolbar. You can also access it by pressing the letter C. You'll see that the menu at the top changes. You have different ratio options. You can type in a custom ratio. If you select a ratio such as 2:3, you can see that the crop boundary changes, and you can click these double arrows to swap the orientation. Press the clear button to clear the ratio that's there and basically unlock the crop so that you can do a custom size. Also in the crop menu bar is a straighten tool that you can use. If you had an image that had like a horizon line and it was crooked, you could drag this along the horizon line to straighten it. Or you can just use it creatively like this to change the angle of the image. I'm going to press this is the cancel button right here. Next to the straighten tool, you'll find a grid that has a list of different overlays with different compositional grids on them. For this assignment, you'll be working with rule of thirds. If you find yourself struggling with the crop tool and want to do a custom sized crop, simply hit the clear button to reset the ratio, and this will allow you to do a free-form crop. Over here in the upper right, you have the reset the crop box tool, which will reset everything but keep the crop tool active. You also have a cancel option that will cancel the current crop option, and then there is a commit the current crop option. So when you are ready, when you have formatted a crop that you are happy with, you can press the commit to crop option to save it. Now this is where we're going to go use the history tool in Photoshop to help us explore. The history tool can be found in the panel on the right. It's the little arrow with the 3 squares, and if you click it, it'll pop up a list of file changes. If you don't see the history panel, or you're having a hard time spotting it, you can go to Window at the top in the File menu and go down to History, and it'll open the history panel for you. So in this panel, you'll find your original image. If you click here, this is going to give you your image the way it was when it was opened. In this area, you can create snapshots to quickly go back to. So here's a snapshot that I've created for you. I'm now going to go create some other examples to show you. In this example, I'm going to create a crop for each of these aspect ratios. So first I'm going to start with the original ratio. Using the rule of thirds overlay, I'm going to frame this subject. So with rule of thirds, generally speaking, you want to place your focal areas at the intersection lines. Now these are just rules that can be broken. So right here I have the main figure, and I could leave it here, but I find this bit on the edge a little distracting, so I'm going to bump this up. Then I'm going to start finessing this until I get a crop that feels about right. And it doesn't have to be like exactly on point, but let's see how this looks. Now using the history tool, I'm going to go down to the bottom of it and hit the little camera icon to create a new snapshot. Return to my original image by clicking the origin state in the history panel. So now I'm going to go to the square ratio. Now I'm going to do a 4:5 crop. So now I have my 5:7 crop. I'm going to hit the snapshot button, and then I can double click on this to rename it so I know what my aspect ratio is. Okay, like I can see there's like this little line right here that's driving me crazy, and this right here. So I'm going to come back in with my crop tool and come in just a little bit more. press the snapshot button. Now I can go back and forth between the two to decide which one I prefer. I definitely prefer the second one, so I'm going to right click and delete the one I made previously, and then double click this to rename it. Now I've returned to my original image. I'm going to go for a 2x3. Return to my original state. Go to 16 by 19. One's going to be a little tricky. But this is why we're working with a high resolution image, so that we have plenty of pixel data to work with and we can get aggressive with our crops. You can also use the arrow keys to dial in your crop, move the frame ever so slightly right here. We can now cycle through the history panel to view our different crops and determine which one is the most successful and to analyze how they each affect the image. Here's our original image, and now we're going to compare our different crops using the rule of thirds grid. So here we have the original aspect ratio, a 1:1, 4:5, 5:7, 3:2, and 16:9. Notice how simply cropping and reframing the subject matter in the image greatly changes how the viewer reads the image. Now let's play with how changing the angle of the image affects how the image is read. For this crop, I have a little empty space in the bottom corner, so I'm going to use the Content Aware Fill option to automatically fill in that corner. Now I'm going to drag the history panel inside of this panel in order to make more space on my screen. So now let's compare, double clicking these to collapse them. So we just have the history panel. Now let's compare some of the different crops, paying attention to how differently the image is read based on whether it's a horizontal or vertical crop or the image is tilted. So first we're going to compare our original ratio. So we've got a wider one and then a tighter crop. We've got our 1:1, 4:5, 5:7, 3:2, and 16:9. Notice how differently the image is read based on whether the figure is placed to the right or the left, higher or lower in the frame, whether the angle of the image is rotated significantly or subtly, how the aspect ratio, horizontal versus vertical, changes the feel of the image. For this assignment, there's not a wrong or a right way to crop or draw focus. Simply use the rule of thirds to help you create balanced compositions. Look at the image and choose what you want to focus on. It may be that you don't want to draw focus to the prominent figure in this image. You may want to crop into a different area to create something very different. Remember that you can rotate the image. Remember that if you want to go outside the bounds, you can try using the Content Aware tool to fill in the edges. Just be careful because it can get really wonky. And then once you do have some crops that you are happy with, feel free to go in and play with the color and tones of the image. So go forth and explore.